Welcome back to the Source Garage. So I'm finally doing my review of the Twin Busch TWS 319, which I've gotten installed in my garage now and used probably 3 or 4 times. And I'm going to go through this as kind of a review and discussion for different people who might be considering this and help you avoid all the obstacles and challenges and things I didn't think about before I got it, because it was a much bigger process than I ever anticipated to get it all set up and working properly. And I'll go through the instructions and a lot of the stuff that was really confusing to me or didn't make sense and I had to contact the manufacturer about, and a lot of some shortcomings essentially in the instructions that I think I can help with. So I got some notes on my phone here I'm gonna work through as I go to make sure I don't miss anything. So pre-work before you actually get the lift. Number one, first thing I think about is dimensioning and spacing for it, obviously. So if you go on their website, and I'll put up on the screen here, there's a diagram they give for the dimensions of how big everything exactly is. I came out here with some pieces of cardboard that I've like cut to size to kind of position it and mock it up and be like, okay, can I actually make this work dimensionally and fit where I want to and not block off the garage? Because they are, obviously you can see behind me, pretty large. And so you have to consider that, and as well as where you're going to put the control panel. And relative to an outlet, you need to have a 20 amp outlet to make this run properly. I think they said you could use it on a 15, but it would trip it a lot. I just recommend getting a 20 amp, and I had to get a dedicated one of those installed. That's the only thing I think electrically that you have to worry about it externally to the lift itself. That's the only thing you have to be concerned with is, do you have a 20 amp power supply? Okay, it'll run off that. So once you dimension it out, you understand that you have the right space where your box is going to go. You need to make sure the box is going to be within 5 feet. I say box, the control panel unit is going to be within 5 feet of the plug, because that's how long the electrical plug is from the unit itself to get to your 20 amp outlet. You could use an extension cord, but it would have to be high gauge, and they recommend not using an extension cord. What else? The floor, okay, your ceiling. So obviously, if you don't have a very tall ceiling, you're not going to be able to lift up your vehicle very high. This lift goes up 6 feet in the air. So like my Corvette, since it's pretty short, I can lift it up pretty high. I think about 5.5 feet I got it. But if I was going to bring my truck in here, I'd probably only be able to get it 4 feet off the ground, if that, because of the ceiling height. So this is obviously residential applications, just things to consider. The biggest thing for me that I did not consider was the levelness of the floor, and I spent probably 80% of my time with this lift focusing on the leveling of it and my floor, because I had a pretty crappy garage floor installed. And so talk about what I mean. So a residential floor in a garage is typically sloped to some degree to get the water out of the garage. Well, mine is kind of like a BMX park, for lack of a better term, in that it's wavy, it's all over the place. My garage was not poured in any uniform manner whatsoever. And where I wanted to put the lift here, there was obviously a crack in the floor running right through the front here, and there was one off to my other side here. I'm not sure if you can see it on the camera, I'll show it. But so I had to consider my anchor points being away from the cracks in the floor and where I'm going to position the lift. And so the cracks are right on a high spot. And so initially when I brought these in and I set them down, that was, I put them down, nothing was level. I should have measured more carefully beforehand. I thought I could just put a couple shims down and it would be all good. No, it was way worse than that. I was dealing with something like a 2-inch slope from one side to the other, which is just not acceptable at all for this. And so after I got them down, I ended up lifting them back up, moving them out of the way, going and renting a concrete grinder to grind down my garage floor and try and get it to something acceptable. And that didn't end up working out as well as I expected it to. I still ended up having to shim different sides of it and put plywood on the far ends of it because the garage is sloped down. But once I've done all that, I've gotten it level. But if you can get a completely level floor to start with, that would be a million times better than this, because this was a giant pain to get positioned properly and then anchored to the floor. Wouldn't recommend trying to shim it in any way. I would recommend getting a flat floor in the first place, but hey, sometimes you just gotta live with what you got. So other than, let's see, they talked about the floor, the ceiling, the dimensions, the outlets. I only have 4 inches of concrete here. That wasn't a problem. I just went and got some shorter anchor points that were 5 inches instead of the 7-inch ones that it comes with, because I only have 4 inches of concrete. Drilled right through the floor, and anchoring it was no problem. I don't think there's anything else to talk about with the floor. Yeah, just be conscious of where your cracks are and where the holes are actually in the lift itself, because the front anchor points are on the very outside edge, and on the back they're 4 inches in on either side. So just be conscious about where the cracks are on your floor for that. So that's all the pre-work and everything to think about before you're going to put it in. Once you actually get it delivered to your house, what's going to come all on one big pallet. And when it was delivered to me, it actually took me and the 2 delivery guys to get it up my driveway, because I got a pretty steep slope and a big like dip at the end of it. They said it weighed about 2,000 pounds in total. I think each of these weighs about 800 pounds each, so you are not going to be able to pick it up and just wiggle it around. I would recommend, if you could, to get some kind of engine lift with straps to maneuver it around. If you don't have that, I ended up using furniture dollies. I was able to like swing it one side after the other to get it onto some furniture dollies off of the pallet. And then once I got them positioned on the furniture dollies, I had a crowbar and wood blocks, and I would kind of pry it up just a little bit to take the weight off, drop it down, put wood blocks under it, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's a huge pain in the butt if you don't have the proper tools to move this kind of thing around. You're not going to drag it and kick it, and it's just too heavy. So that's one thing to definitely be aware of. It saying 800 pounds, like, can you move that much? You're going to need something too. So yeah, crowbar and wood blocks for me was the only way I was able to get to move, and with furniture dollies. That was a huge pain in the butt. Once you do get it positioned, you probably would have already thought about the hydraulic lines. You've got about 12 feet of hydraulic lines to run from the primary unit all the way to your box, and I'll show that. You have to run also the limit switches and air line. So you do have to have an air line plugged in. The limit switches will plug in. The plugins for the limit switches do not appear to be labeled in any way, so you can tell which one plugs into which. So I just had to guess and figure out which one worked. There's only 2 of them, so you really get it right on the first try. You can flip them. It's pretty easy. Hooking up the hydraulic lines, you really do have to follow the instructions in the manual to make sure you do it right. I ended up taping so there's 3 hydraulic lines. I taped them off like 1, 2, and 3, front, middle, back, whatever you want to do it, so that you know when you hook them up in your control panel and when you run them to the front of the lift, that you know which one's which, because you have to have that perfectly. You don't want to fill it up with the fluid and try and run it and not work. You really have to be careful and follow the instructions in the manual to get it on screen properly. I don't know why I said on screen, just to get it hooked up properly. What else there? Once you get it hooked up, once you have everything connected so that it looks just like it does in the manual, you'll fill it up with oil and have it plugged in. You have your air supply hooked up, and it won't ever go down without an air supply, so you have to have an air supply hooked up. You could blast some air through the lines, but I just get some I got to go to Harbor Freight. I'm going to pick up a tiny air compressor. It's going to be dedicated just for this, and I'll go over that in just a minute too. Okay, so once you've got everything hooked up and positioned, getting it going and actually starting to bleed the lines and get the lines filled is a huge pain in the butt, and the instructions suck. So I got a book. This was my instruction book that came with it, and it had like a 1-pager in here on bleeding the system. And I could not get the instructions to work for me at all, where it said to leave the valves in the open position and hold the up button, and eventually it'll raise up. I did that for probably half an hour on and off, trying to like get it to raise up with the valves in the open position. Nothing was working. I put in the closed position and was holding the button down, and eventually I would get one, I think it was the far one, to just bump up a little bit and then maybe start raising. And I think I was out here for probably an hour messing around with it, like up, down, valves open and closed, and I couldn't figure out what was going on because I'm following the instructions exactly word for word. I don't want to keep pushing the buttons if something's like hooked up wrong, if I'm not doing it right. So I contacted Dan, who's the rep at Busch, and he's like, oh, just make sure your connections are right. He sent me a different set of instructions. I emailed him again saying I thought I had it connected right. Still trying to follow those instructions. It wasn't working. So he sent me a third set of instructions. So I now have 3 sets of instructions for the same lift that all read a little bit differently. And eventually what happened was, after time number, I don't know, like 12 or something of pushing it up, I finally got the other lift to start to raise up. And after that, I just kept them in the closed position, pushing them up, pushing them down, up, down, up, down. You're going to do that for hours. And you're going to fiddle with the valves, get them open and closed. Like I said, I couldn't get the instructions to work. I don't know why. Following the leaving it open and pushing it up never worked for me. Even now when the lift's working fine, I can't turn the valves open and get it to go up. It doesn't work for me. So that's what the instructions say to do. I never could get it to work. I've always had to have them closed. So just for you to know. Once you do get them going up and down with some relative consistency and the lines are bled, and you'll hear it when you're bleeding the lines, you'll hear the air pumping back into the box in the bottom. You'll know that you're doing it properly. You'll just go up and down until that stops happening. You don't hear the air coming back in. To finally get these leveled is actually really easy once you have them going up and down. So underneath here on the main shaft, and I'll show this when I do a demo before or demo after this, there's some teeth that are the safety catches essentially for the latch under there. And I'll explain in the video, but basically you kill the air supply and it'll mimic like an air failure, and the latch will catch as like a safety point when you push the down button. And then if you've had them raised onto the same tooth underneath and you kill the air supply, the lifts will both come down, latch on that exact same tooth, and if you have a level floor, they should be perfectly level. Now my floor wasn't perfectly level, one lift was slightly higher than the other, so then I had to raise them up and mess with the valves still to actually get them level. And what I mean by that is, if you have both valves closed and you're pressing the up button and you open one valve and then shut it, you'll see one of the lifts stop going up and lag behind. And that's how you get them leveled out even further if you need to, is by opening and closing the valves. One controls each side, so it's actually pretty easy. Like I said, the hardest part for me was actually just getting them up and down and getting the lines bled because I couldn't follow the instructions that I had. And then once you get it level and you have it working properly, the last thing I did was actually anchoring it to the floor, which after I got everything leveled wasn't hard at all. I mean, it was a 30-minute job to drill holes, put the anchors in, tighten them down, torque them to the spec they give in the book here, which I think was like 120 Newton meters. Yeah, 120 Newton meters. And then that was really it. Then they start working. So the last thing I would touch on here is and I'll grab the camera to show you this. So for the control panel here, you have up, down 1, down 2, then your emergency stop, and obviously your power button here, and then this is your bypass, which I've never actually had to use yet for any reason. But anyway, so up, obviously we'll raise it up. Down, it'll go up slightly and then start dropping. And at down 1, we'll take it down pretty low, and it'll stop here in just a second. And this is when your car would be about to hit the ground, and it stops. And now the last thing you have to do is down 2 will actually drop it down the rest of the way. And I'm guessing this is for safety, and that down 1 will only go down this far so that you can check and make sure there's nothing under the bottom area here before you drop it all the way down. So now I'll hit down 2. And now it's all the way down. And you can see here that this is the where the little alarm goes, and I should probably put this back on. But so I taped over it. This little thing is insanely loud. When I'm sitting here and trying to bleed the hydraulic lines for hours, you will want to rip your ears off because of how loud and annoying this thing is. So I put some tape over it, dulled it probably 50% of what it was, and it's much more tolerable now. You could also just take the electrical panel off really easily with just these screws. I mean, I did it just to look at it, and you could disable this if you wanted to. Obviously not recommended, but you could. So just be aware the alarm is extremely loud. Inside the cabinet here, so I've got this really jankily rigged up right now because of the air supply. Like I said, I need to go to Harbor Freight still. So this is your air supply. You're going to want to get a standard 1/4-inch air adapter here for your compressor, because what comes on it is, I believe, European, and this is from Germany. Now this mounts to the side in here, but my air hose has such a long end on it, it doesn't fit nice up there. So where those 2 holes are is where it mounts, and it just doesn't fit well right now. So I've got to fix this still right now. I've just got it kind of sitting in here, not very nicely. Here's the levers I was talking about. So there's 2 of them, one on the front and back, and one of each of these controls the lifts themselves. So this is what you'll be futzing around with to actually get it level. And this on the front here was actually not mentioned anywhere in the instructions that I don't think I could find. I think it was mentioned in one of the sets, but I haven't had to use it. Or this knob on the side that I think is supposed to adjust the speed. I've messed with that and haven't got it to do anything noticeable for me either. So I haven't had to futz with anything other than the 2 main levers here. So these are the bricks that come with the lift, and part of why I have to raise it up even higher than you would think to get it up on the lift properly. So these are about 1.5 inches thick, and so I have the wood under the wheels to raise the car up even more, so that on the platform here I can actually still fit the bricks under and get them onto the lifting pucks. But just something to be aware of, because when I first did this I was thinking like, okay, I just have to get it up on top of here, and I didn't think about the clearance I'm going to also need of these bricks as well, because the front of the vet here rides 4 inches off the ground roughly, and so I've got 4 inches here to clear plus another 1.5 inches with the block here, so I've got to get it up a lot higher than expected originally, and I'll show you what it looks like going under here. So here it is sitting under there. You can see the puck at the top, and it is kind of tight getting right under the lip here, but it's not too bad once I've got enough clearance to push it underneath here. So let's raise it up now. All right, so to start, just gonna press up a couple. I'm gonna stop and just check and make sure everything looks like it's in place good. Just me being overly cautious. So now you can obviously see the car is up. I don't really know what else to talk about other than, yeah, of course, the car is off the ground now. This is about the height I had it at when I was putting the mods on here. I mean, you can see it rocking there, but it's pretty solid, as it should be, right? So it looks like it's getting out of frame here a little bit. Let me turn the camera up. So I'm getting kind of close to the top of the garage here. Grab the camera here so you can see more. So I've got it lifted up. Obviously, I don't know why I keep talking about that, but here's what it looks like underneath. So at this point I could really easily kind of scoot around under here on a low creeper. And I'll go a little bit higher when I'm going to do some more work under here, changing the transmission and the differential. But you do have plenty of space. I'll come around to the back here. So I mean, there's a ton of room under here to get at everything you would want in the middle of the car. And on the back end here. And you can see how much space I've still got on the wheels in the back and the front here. So yeah, I'm not sure what else there is to talk about. Let me know if you have any questions, but that's really it. So I'll drop it down now. Oh, actually, no, what I could show you while I'm here is, so the teeth on this, I guess I don't know what to call this inner shaft here, have this little latch right here. And this latch is the safety catch. So the reason you have to have the air plugged in is it pops that latch up so that the teeth can go back in. And when, let's say you had like an air failure, or for some reason the hydraulic lines failed, that latch would catch and prevent the car from coming down. But when you're trying to level, you want to mimic that air failure, as I talked about in the leveling portion, and you basically make sure that this latch is in the same spot, the same number of teeth from the top on both of these, and then you can disconnect the air and go down and it'll latch into the same tooth. And if it's level, right, then, or if you're on the same tooth, they'll lock in at the same spot. If your floor is level, then the top here should be at the same height as well. All right, so let's go down now. Try and straighten up the camera a little. It goes down pretty quick. So I kind of stopped it there. Yeah, it's been a little rough going down each time. I'm not sure if there's something I'm doing wrong, but just pressing the down one button and then down two. There you go. So I think that's all there really is to it. If you have any questions or want to know anything else that I didn't cover in the video, just let me know. I'll reply to whatever you ask or want to know about. The customer service, Dan, was super helpful with any of the questions that I had when trying to get this set up. It was a pain to put together, but now that I've got it together and working, I'm happy with it. It works exactly as advertised, so all good in the end, I guess. So hopefully I've shared enough information to help you make a decision if you're considering this lift or if we're thinking about getting any kind of lift in your garage at all. There's a lot more stuff to consider than I initially thought, with this being residential is more of a pain in the butt with a non-flat garage that probably would be in a more professional application. But hey, live and learn, and more things to consider for next time. So hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, leave me any questions you have below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel for more stuff like this, and support the source. Check out thesourcegarage.com. Thanks for watching.